Hello and welcome everybody to episode 33 of Kerbal Space Endeavour. We're gonna start this episode with the return of our Moho crew, where if you remember from the last episode, I was not smart enough and I actually changed my super perfect trajectory into the wrong trajectory, and now we're going counterclockwise around the planet instead of clockwise, and therefore going in for an encounter with the station in orbit where our shuttle would be waiting for them to return to Kerbin is. So I do slow down and I'm going to circularize my orbit, but we're going to see what is going to happen then. So I'm not aero braking with this craft because I do not believe that it would sustain aero braking whatsoever. So we're just going to use the excessive amount of fuel that we have. The thing is, what I was trying to do right here, if you look at the purple marks right there, I was trying to get an encounter with the space station Shangri-La, and it was actually fairly close. And as I get closer, I came to realize that, first of all, the engines will not be powerful enough to make a complete stop of my orbit and then accelerate towards my target again. And second of all, I would have needed a lot more delta V to conclude this maneuver. So yeah, big mistake, and I decided, well, I guess we're not going to save the drive stage of this craft. We're going in for a landing. That's why it was smart of me to bring along a crew pod that has a heat shield on it, and it has parachutes on it. So in any case, if I ever ran out of fuel before I was able to get the Kerbin or anything like that, I could aero brake, or yeah, it was just a good emergency backup plan that I had. So we're just going to warp again a little bit ahead here, where we're going into the separation stage pretty much. So we're just going to click here and decouple. And yeah, so we're just gonna have our drive stage pretty much burn up in the atmosphere, and our wonderful capsule here, using its heat shield, will survive re-entry. And I came actually fairly close to the Kerbal Space Center, but in the end it was a water landing nevertheless. It is good that I practice re-entries because our Layeth base will be hard to land. But let's jump back to old me. Alright, so here they are back. We have a vessel recovered from a suborbital flight of Moho. And Gustus, Lumen, and Billy Bobry Kerman have returned with a lot of new ribbons. Mission time ribbons, awarded for more than 400 days in around Kerbin. No, Kerbin days spent on a mission. Splashdown ribbons. I can't read ribbon. Flag on Moho ribbon. Moho EVA ribbon. Moho orbital ribbon. First Moho docking ribbon. First Moho orbit ribbon. Sun orbit ribbon. And I guess spent more than 200 days on a single mission and returning safely. Kerbin EVA ribbon. And the standard words vehicle ribbon to every crew member of a vehicle with a total mass of 250 tons and more. Does he have anything special here? Oh yeah, Billy Bobry was on Mun, as we remember. Back in orbit here, we have the shuttle that was actually waiting for the Moho crew. And yeah, well, they are already on the ground, so we can just send the space shuttle down with all of the exchanged crew and bring them home safe and sound. So yeah, we have a normal maneuver like we did in previous episodes before, and we also came in here for a safe landing, but for some reason I don't know where the video file for the landing went, so this is all that I have. Now let's jump back to Shangri-La, where we're building something new. Well, actually something new, old, just newly redesigned, and this is the Layeth SATCOM mission that I'm launching again. This time around I added a big orange fuel tank with a big atomic engine at the end. I also added some solid rocket fuel boosters that we're going to use for our initial burn. I did that because I felt like I was not going to have enough delta V to get it to Jool. I tried calculating again, and well, it just the numbers looked a little bit iffy, so I added a lot more fuel in another engine and the solid rocket boosters. Now, I did do something off screen, and that is I brought all of the crafts that are going to Jool into a very high orbit. The reason I'm doing this is, as far as I know, the further I get away from Kerbin, the easier I have it Delta Viva wise to get to Jool. The thing that I came to realize later on is something I could have used when burning to Jool, which hasn't happened yet, but I could technically still do, but I don't know if it really works, and I'm not as good at it, is the Oberth effect, which if I get my orbit low enough for my escape trajectory, I could save a lot of delta V and a lot of fuel. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, we'll see, but yeah. So I set up a lot of maneuver nodes and times for when these things hit apoaps, where I then need to burn and circularize these in a very, very high orbit around Kerbin. So somewhere in the middle between Mun and Minmus. But let's get back here to Shangri-La, where we're already building the next big thing. And the next big thing is something that has to do with bringing all of these crafts into a high orbit, and that is a mobile refueling station, which I'm going to get to later once we've actually built it. But since building time takes a little bit of time, let's jump down here to our mining craft, the behemoth, and send up some metal to Shangri-La for future constructions, because we need a lot more metal if we're going to build more rocket parts, and we desperately need more rocket parts for all of these new crafts that we've built and that we're going to build. And believe it or not, we have another marker here, and this is our base. This will be the base for Leith, for the ground base. And here I was smart enough, or lucky enough, to use Mun's gravitational pull to get me into a high orbit around Kerbin. Though somehow I misread the path here a little bit. Yeah, I misread it. There we go. And I would actually crash into the planet. So what I had to do is do a little bit of a correction burn, get myself out of the planet, pretty much raise my periaps out of the planet so we do not crash into it. And with changing that, we actually get our afterwards higher orbit in Kerbin. So as we zoom over the planet, at, well, moon for the matter, at a very, very low altitude, we actually fly past an old flag of ours, which was the East Farside Crater, if you remember from the previous episodes. But we were smart enough to not go too low, and we have no crash on Mun, which is very lucky. So yeah, let's set up another alarm clock for when we finally hit apoaps. Next thing that wants to be happening, or wanted to be happen, or oh my god, my English is so bad today. Well, I'm a little bit of a rush. However, this craft here is our station for Leith, our station in orbit for Leith, and we're also going to bring this into a high circularized orbit, from which I could still try doing the Oberth effect, use the Oberth effect, but yeah, who knows. I'm actually not that proficient when it comes to interplanetary transfers yet. With these kind of things, I'm actually kind of new to the game, even though I've been playing it, I think, for more than a year now. Yes, I know that's kind of sad, but oh well, yeah, that's just the way it is. And I just want to always be on the safe side with all of these things, because when you build something up that big and you have so many missions going to Jool right now, I don't want anything to go wrong. I mean, yes, it would be funny for you guys to see it, but it would be horribly, horribly frustrating for me. But yeah, after the burn and circularizing the station, we're going to jump back here to Shangri-La and continue building our mobile refueling station. And while we're building it, guess what? We have another thing happening, and this time it is the Jool SATCOM mission, which we need to circularize. So yeah, there's so much happening this episode. I actually had to write a script for it, so I actually knew what was going on. But I hope the way I am trying to describe it to you guys, you have a fairly good idea what's going on. So yeah, after a little bit of burn time, we circularize our Julian SATCOM mission. So let's jump back to Shangri-La and continue building our mobile refueling station. Oh, and guess what? We have the next thing happening, which is the Lathe SATCOM mission. There we go. We jump right to it. And now we need to circularize this one right here, which we do after a little burn. You can see in the top right corner of the screen, we have used quite a bit of fuel for this burn, but we're going to refuel it with, you would have guessed, the mobile refueling station. But before we do that, the Lathe base has a colony logistics hub on it, so I'm able to refuel it directly from the ground right here. And yeah, this is parked in orbit. We can send our fuel there and be happy that we don't have to send a craft to it. Now, finally, we can finish our mobile refueling station right here. It is completely autonomous. It doesn't need any crew whatsoever. It has docking ports on it, big and small. And it has, of course, most importantly, the colony logistics hub from which I can then be able to transfer fuels to and off if need be. And it has at the very tip of the craft the little grabber, so if we encounter a craft we need to refuel that doesn't have any docking ports, we can just grab a hold of it and then refuel it. But let's jump ahead to where we're trying to get to our SATCOM mission right here. And I actually make a fairly good burn here. Yeah, there we go. From which we're just going to add a second maneuver node fairly close to target so we can finally manipulate our encounter with it and get as close as we can with our initial path right here, because time is of the essence. Julian transfer mission, the Julian transfer window, is actually coming up closer and closer, and I want to be completely ready for it and still have some spare time if anything goes wrong. Meanwhile, back down on the surface, we're setting up another batch of metal for Shangri-La. Now, here it becomes a little bit frustrating for me again. This I was going to show you guys at the normal speed the game was running at the time. Yes, it was running that slow. So this was the mobile refueling station, and that is me trying to grab it and refuel it. But both of these craft have so many parts on it, it was actually lagging. And once I actually grabbed a hold of it, the game crashed. Hooray! Yes, yes, yes. Too many parts and the game crashes and things like that. So I had to reload, and what I'm doing right here is circularizing the orbit of the orbital refueling station, which will stay there for future uses. Now, the next marker that we have right here is my Lathe base, and somehow it exploded for no reason at all. And I had to reload 4 times until I figured out why does it explode. It only exploded when I time accelerated, and somehow when I activated the PDU unit, then time warped, the craft would explode. So once I turned off the PDU unit, it was actually working. Oh, and before I forget, because I was unable to use the refueling station to refuel the Julian and the Lathe SATCOM mission, you saw I would have been capable of doing it, but the game just wouldn't let me because I kind of struck the limits of the game part-wise. So I had to edit save files to put fuel into it. Please forgive me for cheating. Alright, so after figuring out why the base was exploding, I turned off the PD unit and circularized the orbit. Back down here, we're sending up more fuel for the Layeth base, so that one is completely refueled as well and ready to go for, I guess, what we could call the big exodus of the Kerbal people. So, let's jump back to Shangri-La, where we built the next craft. Yes, so many constructions, so many warping around, so many time markers, it's unbelievable. No, this craft here is the crew transport. If you remember, right now we do not have any crew whatsoever on board our Layeth base, and we need to, or I want to send 2 to 3 Kerbals with the Layeth base. I haven't decided yet. I still have to calculate how much food I actually brought. And yeah, Jool is a far, far place away. It will take me between 2 and 3 years to get there. And yeah, I do not want my guys to run out of oxygen, snacks, or water for the matter. So yeah, we're just gonna park our little, I'm just gonna call it a crew transport for now, until you guys give me a good name for it. So any suggestion, just put it down in the comment section, and I will take the one that looks and sounds the best. But let's jump to one of the last things this episode has to offer. And that is my Layeth SATCOM mission. Yes, the new Layeth SATCOM mission. I made a big mistake. You remember there are supposed to be 2 surveyor probes on it. One that is going to go into a high orbit around Layeth, one of which is going to go into low orbit around Layeth. Well, I forgot to put probe bodies on these little crafts. So I actually built a small thing, brought the 2 new updated surveyors to it, and then I had to go in for a docking. Remember, I was trying earlier to refuel these missions with the big mobile refueling station and the game crashed, but this time around it actually worked. And I was smart enough to put everything on here with docking ports, junior docking ports, and not decouplers. Otherwise, I would have had to build the entire Layeth mission again. And if you're wondering what happened to the old Layeth mission, I disassembled it, sent it back to Shangri-La, and put it back into scrap metal. And of course, the little stage that brought these 2 surveyors here is going back to burn up in the atmosphere of Kerbal. So, yeah. Here we're back in Shangri-La, and the next window, fairly close to the window of the Julian departure, we have to have an ELO mission starting. Yes, we're going to all of the planets pretty much at the same time. So what I'm building right here is a combination. It is an ELO mission that is, at the same time as it is a SATCOM mission, it is also a surveyor mission. So we're gonna go into a lower orbit, start surveying it, and once we are completed that, we are going into a hard orbit and complete the survey there. Now, as this episode comes to a conclusion, I wanted to say that I'll be gone for the next week. I'm going to spend a week in London, and therefore the next weekend there will not be an episode. And yeah, the next thing that will happen in the future episodes is also right after the ELO window. I think I have about a day or so when we have a departure window for Duna. And only a little bit after that we already have a window for Eve. So there is a whole bunch of things coming up in the next episode, and that will be construction for Duna, Eve, and then we're going to go into the huge exodus that will be the departure from Kerbal from all of these crafts. And until next time, my name's Antilles.